Friday Fluff recap. Let's get into the week's top headlines. Hey, it's been another stellar week. Let's do it. All right, let's get into some fluff. The Federal Reserve was even more hawkish than the bond market anticipated following its decision to start hiking rates on Wednesday, yet there was no stock market sell-off. The Federal Reserve hikes interest rates for the first time in 3 years. The Federal Reserve announced Wednesday it would increase interest rates in a series of hikes throughout 2022 amid an overheating economy and soaring inflation. Mr. Powell's been saying inflation's been transitory for 1.5 years, so now it's soaring. So the Federal Open Market Committee, the FOMC, announced it would increase the federal funds rate by 1/4 percentage point to a range between 0.25 and 0.5 from its near zero level. So the Fed, led by Chairman all-knowing Oracle Jerome Powell, highlighted growing concerns regarding inflation. It's not transitory, is it? After the FOMC meeting on Wednesday, adding the war in Ukraine. It's all the war's fault. There was no inflation before the war. Could further worsen pricing pressures. You think? So inflation remains elevated, reflecting supply and demand imbalances to higher pandemic, higher energy prices because we refuse to drill in the United States that has the largest reserves in the world, and broader price pressure, the FOMC said in a press release on Wednesday there, end of the day, middle of the night. So the move to hike rates, usually economics 101 here, ladies and gentlemen, the move to hike rates usually depresses consumer ability to spend money while slashing rates promotes spending and borrowing. And that's according to the Washington Journal. Got some top-notch economists there at the Washington Journal. So Fed signals 6 more interest rate increases in 2022. Get ready, housing market, 6 more rate increases. The Federal Reserve's policy-making committee is projecting further 1/4 point increases in its federal funds target range at each of its 6 remaining meetings in 2022. So hey, they ripped off the Band-Aid on this past Wednesday with the first rate increase since 2018. The Fed will also soon announce the start of the runoff of its securities holdings. Get this, ladies and gentlemen, which have grown to $8.9 trillion since March 2020. Powell said the FOMC could announce plans for its balance sheet to shrink as early as the next meeting on May 3rd. They might do it on the 4th. Depends when the cocktails get there. So, moving on to the stock market, the S&P 500 began the week at 12.7% below its January all-time high. Analysts at the Fundstrat noted that if the average, drawdown during a recession is roughly 24.2 to 25%, then the markets were pricing in around about 50% chance of a recession. I would disagree with those folks. We are in a recession right now, on the verge of a depression from my micro analysis. So after Wednesday's rally, the index sits at 9.5% off its high, closer to correction than anything else. The movement reflects the batch of recession-busting developments this week, as well as Powell's comments. Oh, he spoke up. It's way before they spoke up about this. So moving on to China. Chinese stocks, they surged for second day following Beijing's intervention. The Chinese stocks continue to surge higher Thursday as Beijing pledges to support the stock market and boost the economy, sparked by a second day of buying. So this was particularly good news for Chinese companies listed in the U.S., as the committee said it has maintained they've maintained solid communications with U.S. regulators, noting that the two sides were working on a cooperation plan. So just last week, the Securities and Exchange Commission named 5 Chinese companies that could face delisting. Going to get on that delist. So what's next? China's stance on Russia, which has reportedly asked China for military aid, remains the elephant, ladies and gentlemen, the 800-pound gorilla in the room. So I think they did. So if Beijing did provide such help, then sanctions and the inevitable financial consequences would surely follow. I highly doubt that. We wouldn't do that to China. They would get upset. So now, I just did a talk on this. Biden sent over $13.6 billion in Ukraine. That's going to get in someone's back pocket. But no, Biden just approved another $800 million move for military aid for Ukraine. Another $800 million. President Joe Biden has authorized $800 million more in security assistance to the Ukrainian military, bringing the total of military aid to $1 billion, plus the 13.6 that he gave already, including longer-range surface-to-air missile systems and drones, sending shares of military drone supplier stocks nearly 10% higher. Get into those defense contractors, get into those defense stocks. So, we're not involved in this war. We're just sending $14 billion over there. Retail sector attracts bidders and activists looking for value bids, and activists are swooping into the retail sector, which right now is looking sort of hot, which has been staging a kind of a recovery from the pandemic. Kohl's attracted new bids that put its valuation over $9 billion, according to the Wall Street Journal, while an activist is pushing for a sale of big lots. Big lots. So, moving on, some issues at Starbucks coffee. Starbucks goes through CEOs like I go through coffee. Starbucks refill CEO John with Howard Schultz for the 3rd time. Starbucks is bringing back the big man on campus, Howard Schultz, as CEO for the 3rd time. When current CEO Kevin Johnson steps down in April, Schultz will take an interim role while the coffee retailer finds a successor, taking $1 in compensation, or about 27% of the average cost of a tall coffee, or drip coffee for that matter. Schultz, 68, said he hadn't planned to return, but the company must transform once again, and these fools don't know what they're doing. Johnson took over from him in 2017. He's been hanging out in Hawaii the whole time. So Schultz oversaw Starbucks expansion in the 80s and 90s. He's working his ass off before leaving for the first time in the 2000s, where he's living the dream in Ibiza. So what's next? Starbucks said its board has been in continuous CEO succession planning. Ooh, I remember those succession planning meetings, trying to forget, since 2021. When Johnson indicated he was considering retirement as the pandemic came to an end. Starbucks aims to choose a new CEO by this fall. Yeah, I'd like to be put on the short list. I think I have a tremendous amount of experience, and the majority of the time I do think between the lines. I think I could take Starbucks to the next level. Give me a call, DM me, I'll take care of it. So how can the U.S. tame oil prices? Well, maybe we want to turn on the tap, but that's not an option in this country. War and oil are, they're linked, aren't they? So World War I launched the modern oil age, turning a little used fuel into the engine of the 20th century. World War II remade how oil was transported, as newly developed pipeline technology helped crude oil carriers avoid the Nazi submarines lurking in the Atlantic. Now, a new war, but it's not between the U.S. and Ukraine, with Ukraine and Russia. A new war in Europe has shaken the world. The U.S. isn't sending troops, but they're there. But it's oil and natural gas are weapons in a financial war against Russia. Russia's given us $70 million a day of oil. So, ladies and gentlemen, the solution seems easy. Turn on the taps again, beat the bad guys. The U.S. is now the global oil market's swing producer. Given escalating sanctions on Russia, energy, and Saudi Arabia's unwillingness to deviate from a policy of slow production growth, but they'll do whatever we say if we really wanted to. Decisions by the U.S. companies will play an influential role in the market. Let's pump, baby, pump, drill, baby, drill. Pumping and exporting more from the U.S. would help stabilize the oil and gas markets in the near term and long term. Top economists are saying, who are in the oil and gas sector, we have the largest oil reserves in the world. Why are we buying oil from Venezuela, possibly Russia, all these other countries. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, we have the strictest rules in the world. Our oil refineries produce cleaner oil. The oil in Russia is dirty. Venezuela is dirty. They don't have the regulations that we have. We refine the oil. It's cleaner. So for you environmentalists, now we are buying party from our enemies, right? And that oil is dirty oil, and we're bringing it into our country. Okay? And remember, when we buy all our solar panels from China, you have to use fossil fuels to do solar and other things. So we're never going away from it. And the people that are not allowing oil to be drilled here are getting money in their back pocket, special interest and lobbyists. So they're double dipping. And the economy in the United States of America is suffering. And it doesn't have to suffer. We are the economic engine of the world, ladies and gentlemen. We need to drill, baby, drill. We do it cleaner. We do it better than everyone. And we have $1 billion into the climate fund. We produce clean coal. Other countries produce dirty coal. So those are the headlines for the week. Have a great weekend. I'm off to Arizona to look at some investment opportunities and to check out spring training, which hopefully will happen in baseball. Take care.